going to start my lecture. So I'll start with the very basic information which we all need to know before going into details of any pathology, of any disorder, any disability to anyone. So my first slide is about the basic component of nervous system, and that is neuron. Okay. So as you all know that a neuron is composed of two main components, the cell body and axon. Okay, I'm not going into details and descriptions of dendrites and axon terminals and myelin sheath and all that. Right now, for the sake of understanding, we only need to understand the very basic component for the traveling of information. Okay, so information always, how I just need to know, can you tell me in which direction information travels in an axon? Either it travels from cell body towards axon, or it travels from axon towards cell body, or in both direction. So you first need to decide that. You can think it in your mind as well. Okay. So first we need to decide that in which direction does axon conduct the impulses. Sorry, the neuron conducts the impulses. So impulse or the information always travel from the cell body towards axon. It never travels in reverse direction from the axon towards the cell body. Okay, so for all the tracts to travel from the brain towards the spinal cord will need to have their cell bodies in the brain, and for all those tracts who has to convey the information from the spinal cord towards the brain needs to have their cell bodies within the spinal cord. And this is very important for understanding the convey of information of different tracts. The neuron and the direction of convey of impulses in the neuron. Okay, that's great, no problem. I'll repeat it for you. So I want to ask you a question that when, neuron is the basic component of the nervous system. So I just want to ask a question that neuron has two components, cell body and axon. Can you tell me that in which direction information travels? Does it travel from cell body towards axon, or does it travel from axon towards cell body, or can it travel in both directions? So for those tracts, the cell bodies will be located in the brain. No, Sadaf. I'm asking that those tracts who are carrying information from the brain towards the spinal cord, for them, the cell bodies will be located in the brain. Okay? And for all those tracts who are carrying information from the periphery towards the brain, the cell bodies will be located in the spinal cord. Because, so all the tracts which are carrying information from the brain towards the spinal cord will be called as descending tracts, and they will have their cell bodies in the brain. And all those tracts which are carrying information from the periphery towards the brain, or you may say from the spinal cord towards the brain, they will have their cell bodies within the spinal cord. Okay, so this is the basic thing which we need to know. So primarily there are two types of the tracts, descending tracts and ascending tracts. Okay, so we are going to discuss today descending tracts. Okay, so one more thing I want to ask you people. Descending tracts, I just want to tell you, descending tracts are of two types. Okay, pyramidal tracts and extrapyramidal tracts. So what do you people think that descending tracts, will they be the motor tracts or sensory tracts? As these are the tracts who are holding their cell bodies in the brain and they're conveying information toward the spinal cord. So what do you people think? Will they be motor tracts or sensory tracts, or they can be both? Really great. So they will always be the motor tracts, right? So more descending tracts are further divided into two types: pyramidal tracts and extrapyramidal tracts. Now we are going to discuss first about the pyramidal tracts. Okay, let me just pull this. Fine. So pyramidal tracts, first of all, we need to understand that why pyramidal tracts are called pyramidal tracts. For we have discussed that they are descending tracts, they are motor tracts, they travel from the brain towards the spinal cord. Now, why they're given the name pyramidal tracts? Do you have any idea why they're called pyramidal tracts? Any idea? Shape. That's great. You have actually concluded it good. But the the point of explanation is that where is that shape present? Where do they look like pyramid? Any idea? If not, no problem. I can explain you. When they're descending. Now, okay, that's great. Actually, they're called pyramidal tracts that when they leave the brain and they enter the spinal cord, they cross at the lower level of the medulla. So, at the level of decussation, when they're crossing, they form a pyramid at the low border of the medulla. That is why they're called pyramidal tracts. I have a picture for that, and you can see that picture. Uh, yeah, it's in here. Can you see that? Look here. Here at the point B, they are crossing, and they're crossing above, but at the point B, you can see clearly, and this is more clearly visible on the lateral view. Okay, so when they're decussating, then they are crossing at the low border of the medulla, they form a shape of pyramid. So simply they're called pyramidal tracts. Pyramidal tracts are further divided into two types: corticospinal tracts and corticobulbar tracts. Okay, corticospinal and corticobulbar tracts. So we are going to discuss first about the corticospinal tracts. Okay, one more thing which I would like, okay, I'll explain that later. Corona radiata. Anybody aware of the corona radiata? What's that? If not, I can explain it later. What is corona radiata? Is anybody aware of that? If not, that's okay. Okay, so let's talk about the corticospinal tracts. So corticospinal tracts, if we see the random explanation of corticospinal tracts, so from the name we can conclude that corticospinal tracts, cortico stands for cerebral cortex. Okay, cortico stands for cerebral cortex, and spinal stands for the obviously spinal cord. So these are some type of the tracts which come out of the cerebral cortex and ends in the spinal cord. Okay, so we need to be very specific about their origin, that from exactly what exactly is their way of the origin. Now, first we need to understand cortico. When we're saying cerebral cortex, what exactly not even you can tell me randomly, what is cerebral cortex? If anybody can tell me. Cerebral cortex. Sadav, Sumi, Jawad, can you hear me? Cerebrum. Okay, cerebrum is the whole uh, part of brain. There's two cerebral hemispheres actually. So cerebral cortex is the most superficial layer of the brain. Is the most superficial layer of the cerebrum, in fact, you can say. Cerebral cortex, what happens is, you can imagine, like if I ask you to explain your head, the layers of your head. So you will say that I have hairs on the top, then I have scalp, then I have skull, and then I have meninges and brain and all that. So hairs are the most superficial layer of your head. Similar to the hairs in the brain, the most superficial layer is known as cerebral cortex. Okay, so cerebrum is something whole cerebral hemispheres are saying. Cerebrum is not. So most superficial layer and the most superior layer of the brain is the cortex, and then below the cortex are subcortical structure, and they all together make the cerebrum. So from the most superficial layer of brain, that is cerebral cortex, rises these corticospinal tracts. I have a figure over here, and here it is. So this is the most superficial layer in red and blue. You know, these corticospinal tracts are arising. Can you see? Can you see all? Can you see the picture, people? At the top of the cerebral cortex, here is the present motor homunculus, and that is important. You can see, actually at some place I really saw a schematic diagram where there was it was shown like a hanging guy with his with his tongue outside, and with his arms hanging, and with his legs hanging between the cerebral hemisphere. So this is motor homunculus. This is actual presentation of different parts of the body which are supplied by which area of cerebral cortex. For example, the corticospinal tracts for the hand will rise from this area. Can you people hear me? The corticospinal tracts for hand will rise from this area. The corticospinal tracts of feet will rise from this area. Okay, and similarly, different corticospinal tracts will arise from different segments of the cerebral cortex. Okay, so from here the corticospinal tracts, they arise, then they come downward at the lower border of the medulla being the part of the brainstem. As you know, brainstem is composed of three parts: midbrain, pons, and medulla being the last part. So at the lower border of the medulla, corticospinal tracts from both the cerebral hemisphere, they cross, they take a state, and they form the pyramids. Okay, are you there, people? So when they cross, okay, Jawad, are you getting me what I'm trying to explain? So when they cross at the lower border of the medulla, then they go towards the spinal cord. Okay, then they go down towards the spinal cord, and they end at the level of anterior horn cells. Okay, you can ask me. Don't get confused. If it's to some extent, try to get it. I'll deliver it the best way possible. So I have explained till now that they originate from the cerebral cortex from the area of motor homunculus presentation. For example, corticospinal tract of the hand, will they originate from here? They'll decussate, they'll cross at lower border of medulla, forming the shape of pyramid. Then they'll go down towards the spinal cord. Now in the spinal cord, they'll end at the level of anterior horn cells. Now can you people tell me where in the spinal cord are located the anterior horn cells? In which region? Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral. In which region anterior horn cells are located? All regions. That's great. They are present in all region, not only in all region, but they are present in each and every segment of the spinal cord. from C1 toward till S4, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, in every segment anterior horn cells are present, and they are present on the both sides, left and right, both sides. So what does that mean? That means that corticospinal tract, after originating from cerebral cortex and crossing at the lower border of medulla, reach to each and every segment of the spinal cord, each and every level of the spinal cord. So for example, C1, corticospinal tract from the cerebral cortex reaches the C1. C1 has its own pair of anterior horn cells where this corticospinal tract will end. I have a schematic diagram for that. I want to show this. And here we go. So you can see that these green lines, they're coming upward from the brain. These are corticospinal tracts. These blue dots, they're anterior horn cells, and this box is a spinal cord. So it's sort of schematic diagram to make people understand. So corticospinal tract coming under, they are reaching to anterior horn cells in each and every segment. Okay, people getting it now? Okay, so corticospinal tract reaching at C1, so that means every level of the spinal cord has its own corticospinal tract, has its own anterior horn cell, and that means it has own conduction system. Okay, so they'll come down, they'll come to C1, then they'll come to C2, then they'll come to C3, and downward towards till S4. So this is how corticospinal tracts travel. They travel from cerebral cortex, they cross lower border of the medulla, they go to opposite side, and they finally end at the anterior horn cell, and every segment gets its own set of corticospinal tracts. Now next question is, okay fine, corticospinal tract has reached the anterior horn cell. What will happen next after anterior horn cells? Do you have any idea what will happen next? Can anybody give me an idea? They will transmit message. No, okay, they'll transmit message. I mean, what will the follow-up of the pathway? After anterior horn cell, what will happen? What will be the origin? Will there be nerve roots, lumbar plexus? What will originate? Then next neuron form, anterior horn, and deliver message. Okay, this is what is happening within the anterior horn cells. Actually, I want to explain you the pathway till the muscles, okay, till the end organ. Now, what will happen? What will happen? Let me just, okay. Here I've drawn a figure. You people can see. This is a figure of a spinal cord segment, single segment, okay, single segment. Now you can see the green color, this is of corticospinal tract, they're coming from above. This blue color dot is anterior horn cell, and this red color arrow is what is coming afterward. This is the motor nerve. Now you know what, it's not the simple that nerve that is going towards the end organs or going toward the skin or muscle or whatsoever. The thing that will originate after anterior horn cell will be the nerve root, and you cannot call it nerve root. As you must have read in many reports, they have mentioned that due to disc herniation, disc clip, the nerve root of the patient has got compressed and patient has got sensory and motor issues, right? So what happens that in the next picture I want to show you what happens that after corticospinal tracts ends at anterior horn cell, from the anterior horn cells originates the nerve root. In the nerve root, there are two components. Motor nerve that is coming from the anterior horn cells going towards the periphery, and from the periphery you can see this orange line. From the periphery is coming the sensory nerve, which is carrying signal towards the dorsal horn cells, and which signals are being transmitted upward through ascending tract to the spinal cord. So what happens, what I want to tell you, that after anterior horn cell starts the nerve root. You will not name it nerve or anything. And what is the composition of this nerve root, that it has both the motor nerve and sensory nerve. This is the only place where the motor and sensory components go in hand with each other. They both are enclosed in a single sheath, one going away from the spinal cord and one going toward the spinal cord. It's like a single road used by the two-way traffic. Now that component is called nerve root. After the nerve root forms the plexuses, the brachial plexus, lumbar sacral plexus, and then these plexuses divide further into roots, trunks, etc. divisions, and then further motor and sensory nerves are formed, and finally those nerves reach the end organ, that are mostly muscles in our case. Well, they reach anywhere. So have you got it? I will show you the picture as well, and of nerve root. This is the picture. Can you people show? They've shown the nerve root. Can you people see? They've shown the nerve root here. From the anterior side, there is the ventral root and the motor neuron is coming, and on the other side they've shown in the blue, but on the both sides same thing is present. Okay, so from here we'll be entering the sensory nerve, and you have a common root, and then they'll combine and go upward towards the brain. So have you got the concept of the nerve root? Hello, have you got the concept of nerve root? So okay, that's great. Okay, now I will go to the next type of the tracts, that are corticobulbar tracts, the second component of the pyramidal tracts. Corticobulbar. Okay, now the corticobulbar, again, they are pyramidal tracts. And will they be motor or sensory? What do you people say? Okay, first let me tell you the definition, then I'll ask you about this. Cortico again stands for the cerebral cortex, as I've told previously about the cerebral cortex. Now bulbar. We need to understand what is bulbar. Bulbar comes from the word bulb. So we need to think that, okay, which is the bulb-like structure in the brain? The bulb-like structure in the brain is the brain stem. So these tracts, they start from the cerebral cortex and they end in the brain stem. Okay, that is why they're known as corticobulbar tracts. So bulb is something, swollen at the top and tapers at the bottom. So anything that looks like a bulb, they were in our botany classes, we used to see the bulb portion in the roots of the flowers and etc. What was that? It was actually the shape that resembles to the bulb. So brainstem is more or less like that. So these tracts, as they start from the cerebral cortex and they end in the brainstem in a bulbar portion, so they're called corticobulbar tracts. So I want to ask the question, will these tracts be motor, sensory, or what, or both? Will these tracts be motor, sensory, or both? Or should I tell? Motor. That's great. That's great. These tracts will all also be motor, because they're part of descending tracts and they're part of pyramidal tracts. And we have spoken previously that descending are always motor. So here is a short figure of the corticobulbar tract. There's a lot to talk about corticobulbar tract, which I will speak about in my upcoming lectures. Right now, I'm confined to hear the explanation. So, now maybe more both. No, they're not both, Jawad. They are always motor, because they're part of descending tracts, and descending tracts are always motor. They can't be both. Okay, because you carry sensations from the periphery, your brain does not produce any sensations which has to be carried towards you. Okay, so they're always motor, remember that. Now I've asked you a question previously. Anybody know about corona radiata? Corona radiata. So corona radiata is another name given to the pyramidal tracts. The word corona means sun and radiata stands for radiations. Here is a figure I want to show you people. Look here. The pyramidal tracts, when they originate from the cerebral cortex, they look like sun radiations. So another name is given to these corticospinal, corticobulbar tracts, and they add another group of tracts in this corona radiata, and that are corticopontine tracts. They say that these all tracts, when they come out of the cerebral cortex, they look like sun radiations. So you can also call them corona radiata. So that is another name given to these tracts. Now, as we have spoken about the pyramidal tracts, let's move on to the next type of the tracts. And okay, let me just, okay. Those tracts are extrapyramidal tracts. Now, these tracts are very, very, very important for our daily life. We cannot perform almost any function without these tracts. So, extrapyramidal tracts, first thing is why they're different from the pyramidal tracts. They're different from the pyramidal tracts. First thing, that they do not originate from the cerebral cortex. They originate from the subcortical structure. Subcortical structure means all those structures that are located below the cerebral cortex. Okay, the different type of nucleus, vestibular chordate, putamen, red nucleus, and different type of nucleus, they are located under the cerebral cortex, that are included in the subcortical structure. From there rises these extrapyramidal tracts. Okay, and where do these tracts end? They also end at the anterior horn cells like corticospinal tracts. Okay, so what are they and what do they do? Now, these extrapyramidal tracts, they're actually the boss of any movement. They're actually the basic prescription maker of any movement. For example, if I ask you to pick up a glass of water, now you'll see the glass, your visual sensations, they'll be carried towards the brain. In the brain, your extrapyramidal tract will make an estimate that, okay, we need to pick a glass of water. What is the distance of glass of water? What is weight of it? How much water in it present? Which muscles I need to contract? Which muscles I need to relax? How much contraction is needed? What should be the shape of the hand to hold the glass of water? What should be the force to hold the glass of water? What should be the speed to reach the glass of water? This all prescription will be made by the extrapyramidal tract. What extrapyramidal tract will make all this and will give it to corticospinal tract. Corticospinal tract will take the information from extrapyramidal tract and will go towards the anterior horn cells and will tell the muscles that, okay, extrapyramidal tracts has this for you to do, and muscle will contract according to the prescription given to them. So the extrapyramidal tract are somewhat like boss. They make the whole plan. They tell them that, okay, this needs to be done, this. For example, as I've given example of glass of water, they will tell them that, okay, contract your, for example, first you need to flex your arm, contract your shoulder flexors and relax your shoulder extensors. Then if you need to pick up the glass of water, it will tell that, okay, contract the bicep and relax the tricep. Then it will tell that, okay, contract the flexor muscles of the hand and relax the extensor muscles of the hand. Now contract at this angle to take the glass of water towards your mouth. Then it will also tell that how much force of contraction is required to lift this object. For example, if there is heavy object, it will tell the muscle to contract much stronger as compared to that if you need to pick the lighter object. So it will make everything written in the prescription and will give it to the corticospinal tract, and corticospinal tract will go and execute the function. After 1 minute, meeting will end. Then you people need to rejoin after 1 minute. Okay, I'm telling you that. So extrapyramidal tract are the boss. Okay, they make everything. So They tell everything to the corticospinal tract. So here are the function of the extrapyramidal tracts. Can you hear me, Sadaf and Jawad and all that? Okay, okay, fine. Okay, so extrapyramidal tract, they are involved with the involuntary movement. Involuntary means those movements which are not under your control. This is something you're not controlling. This is something you are not giving orders. Extrapyramidal tracts are deciding this for themselves, and then they're guiding corticospinal tract. So while performing contraction, they control everything: tone, speed, force, angle, everything except contracting the muscle. That is done by the corticospinal tract. So what did they do? The selective activation of movement and suppression of other. They tell the corticospinal tract that you need to activate this muscle and you need to suppress this. They initiate the movement. They tell the corticospinal tract that which muscles need to be contracted to initiate it. They set the rate of the movement. For example, if I tell you that, okay, pick this glass of water really fast, then you'll contract at a faster rate. You'll just strongly pick it up, bring it. Then if I say you pick it slow, then you'll pick it slow. So this slow and fast, this will be told to you by extrapyramidal tract. They also coordinate movement. Now, for example, if you need to hold the object with both hands, corticospinal tract will tell both the hands to come at which speed, so they can together come towards the object. They can lift it and they can do whatever you want to do in everyday object. So this is all done by, there is list of the extrapyramidal tracts are rubrospinal, reticulospinal, liverspinal, tectospinal. There's a list, you can get that. So and the list, they tell that, okay, they rise from this nucleus, they go to this term and they do this. Okay, so extrapyramidal, for example, if we take the example of Parkinson patient, what happens that they have resting tremors, and they have, in resting tremors, what happens that their forearm is repeatedly supinating, pronating. What actually is that? It's actually that the extrapyramidal tracts are not working well. They're not able to decide. They're not able to give correct prescription to corticospinal tract that which muscle you need to contract and which to relax. So muscles keep on, corticospinal tracts get confused, and they contract one time any muscle and then the next time another muscle. They're just not aware. So their corticospinal tracts are okay, their brain is okay, but the extrapyramidal tract get disturbed, and so their daily life issues also get disturbed. So these are the function of extrapyramidal tract. There's a list of it if you wish to view that, but I think it's all about memorization, so I did not mention that list here. Okay, next we need to talk about upper motor neuron versus lower motor neuron, and I know this is favorite topic and most of us have heard it a lot before. You all there? Are you people hearing me? Are you people getting whatever I'm explaining?